them if they will say today, very basically, that when it came down to the war in Ukraine, that it was not Ukraine that invaded Russia, it was the other way around. Is there anybody in here that has enough courage to say that Russia invaded Ukraine?
What you're about to watch is honestly one of the most revealing moments we've seen in Congress in a long time. Jasmine Crockett put Republicans in a position where all they had to do was acknowledge one basic fact. And somehow, even that became too difficult. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because the deeper this conversation went, the more it started exposing just how far parts of the Republican Party have shifted when it comes to Russia, Ukraine, and Donald Trump. Let's unpack it together.
It's so interesting to me that we all swear an oath to the Constitution, and we say that we take that oath seriously, but when it comes into actually doing something that looks like preserving that oath or looks like preserving the Constitution, we get a little wobbly, and I'm not really understanding what's going on. Freedom of press doesn't look like kicking out the Washington Post, or actually the Huffington Post has been kicked out. We know that the Associated Press has been kicked out, and now the Washington Post is not going to allow for op-eds in any way if for some reason they criticize the sitting president of the United States. What this is starting to feel like is a smaller version of Russia. And I am trying to tell you that we are nothing like Russia. We are not supposed to be like Russia, but that is what we've got going on. And I'm sorry, I know that some of my colleagues still struggle with answering the question of who won the election in 2020. And you may have felt a way when you had social media checking people and saying, no, Trump did not win the election in 2020. That is absolutely factual. And unfortunately, because some people got all riled up because they believed the lies, they ended up getting locked up because they decided that they were going to believe the lies. They ended up at the Capitol on January 6th, and they were trying to tear this thing apart because they felt like their country was falling apart in front of their eyes because for whatever reason, there were people in power that were peddling a lie about the election. We also know, and some of y'all may still say that COVID was a hoax. COVID wasn't a hoax. Tell that to the over 1 million people that died under Donald Trump's first watch. It wasn't a hoax. So no, I do believe that it was okay. In fact, I do believe that it was ethically right for social media to check people because you had people that didn't know anything about science and decided that they were going to put out whatever lies or propaganda or conspiracy theories they wanted to, and people died. At some point in time, we have to evaluate what is factual, and I know that facts hurt y'all, and I just wish we could get on the same page, but we do know during the presidential election that the president would not go and participate in anything if fact-checking was going to be a part of it, because he didn't want to be fact-checked. We know that the vice president got upset in his vice presidential debate when he was fact-checked. It used to be a time in this country that we as members of Congress or elected officials thought that it was okay to just tell the truth. Instead, we're pushing conspiracy theories, and some of them are killing people. It's the same thing that we have coming out of Doge. It's the reason that people are dying. It's the reason that farmers are losing their farms, because we continue to peddle conspiracy theories. It is time for us to say, Mr. President, guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine. Can we at least agree on that one? Facts matter. Y'all, this is literally potentially putting us into an international crisis. We may be heading towards the next world war because we have a president that wants to pal around with Putin and wants to do everything to make him feel good, including lying about who invaded who. Mr. Chair, I got a minute left, but I really want to yield to any of my colleagues and ask them if they will say today, very basically, that when it came down to the war in Ukraine, that it was not Ukraine that invaded Russia, it was the other way around. Is there anybody in here that has enough courage to say that Russia invaded Ukraine?
You can have my time.
And this is yet the problem. This is the problem. That is not infringing upon free speech.
Will the gentlelady yield?
I will yield to the right.
Thank you, Ms. Crockett. To be clear, your challenge, I think, was across the aisle, because I think every member on your side of the aisle agrees with the obvious fact that Vladimir Putin ordered the filthy, bloody, imperialistic invasion of Ukraine. And in fact, at the time, Donald Trump as president never denied it. In fact, he praised it. He said it was, quote, an act of genius when Putin ordered the invasion of Ukraine. So I would hope some of our colleagues would consent to at least that historical point, since we think history is so important. There are people who want to relive that in our oversight report.
And
honestly, this was the moment that said everything. Jasmine Crockett gave Republicans the easiest possible opportunity to shut the criticism down. She asked one simple question: did Russia invade Ukraine? That's it. A basic factual question that should not be controversial in any functioning democracy. And what happened? Silence. Not outrage, not disagreement, just silence. That's what made the moment so uncomfortable to watch. Because years ago, this wouldn't even have been debated inside the Republican Party. Many of these same politicians were openly supportive of Ukraine, openly critical of Vladimir Putin, and strongly in favor of standing against Russian aggression. That used to be standard Republican foreign policy. But now, everything changes depending on what Donald Trump says. And that's the bigger issue people are noticing. It's not even about policy disagreements anymore. It's the fact that so many elected officials seem terrified to step even slightly outside of Trump's narrative, even when discussing something as objectively clear as who invaded who in a war that the entire world watched unfold in real time. That's why Jasmine Crockett's point hit so hard. She wasn't forcing them into some complicated ideological trap. She was testing whether anybody in that room was still willing to publicly acknowledge reality if it risked upsetting Trump's political base. And apparently, for many of them, even that was too risky. That's why so many people watching these hearings feel like they're witnessing something much bigger than normal political division. They're watching a party shift away from independent positions and toward total loyalty to one political figure above everything else. Now look, people will have different opinions on Trump, Ukraine, NATO, and foreign policy in general. That's normal in politics. But when politicians become unwilling to state basic facts publicly because of political pressure, that's when people start getting genuinely concerned about where things are heading. And that's exactly why this exchange blew up online. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Did Jasmine Crockett completely expose the problem here? Or do you think Republicans were justified in staying silent? And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next video.